Hey folks, welcome back once again to Indaba, Africa. This is Chris coming to you live from central Pennsylvania. And yes, I do have a rugby jersey on today. It's actually a kind of a sweatshirt jersey sort of thing here from Rugby United New York. Oops, wrong side. There we go. Anyway, well, folks, by popular demand, by request, frequent request, by the way, finally, we're getting around to this today. We have ManPatria on the channel. And this should be interesting. This will be less of an interview and more of just kind of a conversation. We're probably likely to ask each other a lot of questions about the U.S. and about Africa, and maybe some on South Africa too. We'll see how it goes. But I'm very much looking forward to this. It was something that people were pestering me about. Let's get Dumo on here. And then someone comes back and says, yeah, can you get ManPatria? And I'm like, who do you want, Dumo or do you want ManPatria? Because I didn't know the distinction, I have to be honest, back at the time. So anyway, without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, let's bring on ManPatria right now. So welcome to the channel, Dumo. How are you?
I am great, Chris, and thanks for having me. Much appreciated.
No, it's my pleasure. Like I said, though, but you know how it is. You've got a channel. You've got to make sure that you meet your consumers' demands. People kept demanding that I bring you on.
Oh yeah, I'm actually surprised by that.
Really?
Because yeah, it's just that the way they've been pestering. Because one of my viewers said yes. I asked Chris to get you on the show, and I was like, okay, that's great. But then when I hear from you, it's like it was continued pestering. So that's great. Thanks, guys, for encouraging Chris to bring me on. I really appreciate that, guys.
Well, I think that's a very kind word, encouragement. I think annoying. No, I'm just kidding. Annoying Chris to bring you on. No, I'm just kidding. But no, but the challenge is, it's not as you know how it is. It's not as simple as saying I want Dumo to be my guest on Saturday. People got lives; they got other things to do, and you got other commitments and scheduling things, and and that's without even anything going wrong with snafus, with servers being down. But yeah, it can be quite a challenge. Like for instance, I wanted to get Steve Hoffmeyer on the channel from the outset, but I was kind of sheepish when I had 187 subscribers. I mean, hey, Steve Hoffmeyer, come on my channel. 200 people will hear you. Yeah, that doesn't really work. So I waited till I got to over 5,000, and I didn't know how to reach him. But then a couple people from two angles. One promised me a contact and was slow in delivering. Then another actually, I asked for it, and he kind of ignored me for a couple of days. In the meantime, the first one, after a month, came back with the answer. Then the second one came back and said, hey, here you go. I said, no, it's okay. I already got it. Anyway, so I reached out to his agent, and within 48 hours, she responded. And less than 24 hours later, Steve Hoffmeyer said, I'll be glad to come on your channel with no preconditions. You can ask whatever you want. And I was like, yes. So we had a 2-hour interview. But I mean, that was from flash to bang, as we say in uniform, when we fire weapons, flash to bang. From flash to bang, that was almost 3 months before I got Steve Hoffmeyer on. But he was fantastic. And speaking of which, I kind of let everybody down here. I promised I was going to play Steve Hoffmeyer's new music video for this. What I'll do is at the end of this program, I will play Steve Hoffmeyer's brand new music video, which is out today, and which Steve sent me personally and gave me permission to air. So I'll probably get copyright complaints from CD Baby or somebody, but I do have Steve Hoffmeyer's permission. So to you guys. So Paulie says he's super stoked to see Dumo on. I'm a massive fan. Keep killing people on Twitter, Dumo. So hey, let's get right into it. You go by ManPatria on your vlog on your YouTube channel, but your name is actually Dumo. Tell us a little bit about yourself, because not all of my audience knows who you are.
Yes. Okay. So my name is Dumo Denga.
Wait a second. I got to stop you right there. That's like the coolest name, dude. Dumo Denga. I mean, so who's here? And it is Dumo Denga. Check it out. That is a cool name.
Thank you. I remember when I changed schools many years ago, 2006, and I told the students that, hey, this is my name, and they're like, hey, this is a cool name. I really like it. So maybe I just should have called it the Dumo Denga Show or something. But yeah, so the whole thing on Twitter, just battle people on Twitter, try to get good one-liners going on there. And let me just start with like what I studied. So I studied at the University of Witwatersrand from 2009 up until 2017. And at that time, I got my undergrad and postgrad degrees there.
Okay, I'm glad you said you got a postgrad degree, because I was a little concerned about your learning ability there. If it took you 8 years to do an undergrad degree, but you did both. Okay, got it.
No, it was 3. It was one undergrad.
Oh, okay, got you. And 3 postgrad.
So 2009 up until 2017. So yeah, 2 postgraduate, 1 undergraduate.
Yeah, but when you started saying that, you hadn't got to the postgraduate. I'm like, oh, we got a winner here. 8 years to do a 4-year degree. No.
Yes. Yeah. So I studied Wits for that time, and then I worked in the public sector. Well, I worked for SAA in the public sector for.
Wait a second. I'm sorry. You work for the Wounded Bird? Wow, that's amazing.
Yes.
Okay.
It was. Yeah, my experience there was very interesting. I got to say, there's good people there.
Yes.
Just poor governance, man. The state.
Well,
the state is ruining that thing.
And interference from the state. If they allowed the airline to have independent directors and board members and allowed it to be operated as a going venture, I'm sure they'd be successful. They were great for years.
Yeah, when I got in, it was like the end of the glory days, and then that's when it just started to deteriorate very badly. And so then I left there, and then I'm working in the finance industry, which is good. I'm really enjoying it. It's very challenging, man. It's a very challenging field, but it forces you to think on your feet. Generate solutions and stuff like that. Because now, now that I'm working in finance, it's more private, so the incentives are more of, okay, how do we get more revenue? How do we increase customer satisfaction? How do we, those type of questions. And, the incentives are aligned that way. And it really pushes you to the limits. And then now with the ManPatria podcast, I started that in 2018. And reason why I started it was because of the fact that, I was not happy with the direction that South Africa was going in.
No, come on, say it ain't so.
No, I was just being delusional, man. Like it was actually going well.
Yeah, no, it's so wonderful. I mean, the African National Congress is created the land of milk and honey, and it's wonderful for all South Africans, especially the Khoi.
Exactly, and and I'm just this ungrateful child. I just can't accept the good things. Right. So I wasn't happy, man. Yeah. With the country, how it was, what the plans that they wanted to implement, like nationalizing things. And, the first one was NHI, but I mean, that they introduced back in like the late 2010s. Yeah. Right. And that's when they spoke about it. And then they spoke about it again in 2012. And then it started getting traction again in 2018, 19. So I was like, no, this is not right. And then also, Donald Trump just won the election. I remember that time, 2016. And I could see the culture war in the United States. And now, obviously, the only access I had was CNN and watching a bit of Fox News on YouTube, right? And also watching other conservative commentators and also liberal commentators. When I mean liberal, I mean in the American sense, liberal commentators. And I felt that, now when I looked at that, I thought, okay, seems like the culture was a bit tense. And, I also wanted to talk about that as well. So then I just thought, hey, let me just start a podcast. Let's get people on. Let's just talk to people so that you can get a dialogue going, and then people can listen to it and make their own opinion on it. And I've been doing that since 2018, and it's doing well. It's growing nice and slowly. I'm glad it's not growing too fast because it kind of humbles you as well, because you have to kind of work harder to get those subscribers and get those listeners and gain some credibility. But it's been a great experience, and I'm really enjoying it.
No, absolutely. And right, when it does, my channel just caught fire in the early days, and I jumped from just a couple hundred to a few thousand very quickly, and I was getting 500 new subscribers per day for a while there, until YouTube started playing the shenanigans. But the channel is still growing. It's been an upward trajectory, and it's still one of the faster growing channels on YouTube. But you're right, though, Dumo, you've got to keep coming. When I was out of town and I couldn't live stream, it was like, what have you done for me lately? I went from, 8,000 views in 48 hours to 30 views per hour to 16 views per hour. It was so it's basically, YouTube really is a what have you done for me, not lately, but what have you done for me today sort of thing. So if you're not producing content, people forget about you pretty quickly and they go away. Speaking of which, look, I got to do an intervention. This is absolutely necessary. I'm sorry, Dumo. I've got this necessary. Paulie was a really dedicated follower of my channel. And I hadn't seen a lot of him lately. And now I know why, because he's like the Dumo Denga fanboy here. Dumo is a brilliant mind, ! So glad he's on, ! So I'm guessing that Paulie has been overwatching your channel and neglecting mine. Or maybe he's hanging out with Dodgy Joe. Joe Emilio's here. Joe, has he been on your channel? What's going on with my subscribers? Are they abandoning me for South African YouTubers? Obviously, I'm just I'm having a crack there, but just having a fun day. But you're right. No, you've got to keep it going. You got to keep stuff. So, but you're not a. Okay, maybe I'm wrong, but based on the description of your channel, you're not a classic conservative. You're more of like a libertarian. Or am I right, or am I off base there?
I'm a libertarian, and I mainly speak about economics. When it comes to social issues, I tend to lean more on the conservative side, because that's where I started off, basically, from my beliefs. So, yeah, but libertarian, that you can describe me as that, yes.
All right, so I have to ask this question. So, I mean, South African surnames usually don't puzzle me, but a name like Dumo Denga sounds a lot more like something from Central Africa than South Africa. So, what's your ethnicity, if you don't mind sharing?
Okay, so yeah, I get this question quite a lot. So I'm Xhosa, okay?
Okay,
all right?
I would not have guessed that at all for a lot of reasons.
And there's a lot of Xhosa people with my surname,
okay.
But also at the same time, I'm glad you mentioned this, because even among the vendor people, they also, the Denga surname is actually quite common there, and even in Zimbabwe as well. It's also quite common. The Denga surname is also quite common there as well. And I've noticed that in my interactions, especially when I get stopped by the police, for example, yeah. And you'll look at my license and you'll look at it and you'll be like, oh, Denga. And then he starts speaking vendor. And I'm like, oh, I'm not vendor.
Well, at least, I may have been wrong about the Central Africa, but at least the Venda, that's a lot closer to Central Africa, as are the Zimbabweans, than the Xhosa. Yes. The Xhosa can't get any further south. I mean, the next stop is at Antarctica. So kind of put a break on expansion in that direction. But Joe Mio says, Duma has an awesome voice for radio. Close your eye. Yeah, you have a great voice for radio, man. But you got to be careful when you tell people that, because they're like, what's wrong with my face? Anyway,
that's a good one. That's a good one.
No, it's. But anyways,
I'll just hide my video. No
there
problem.
You go. So we'll do it like this. So there you go. If only we could do that for Bianca von Wyk, I'd be a lot happier. But anyway. Oh my gosh, I saw her response to the Fairview thing, and I just shook my head. I'll tell you, listen, Dumo, listen, this, I've been dealing with this for years on this side of the Atlantic and in Europe, and also in Africa, with this moral equivalency nonsense. Just to digress, but just to take an easy example here. We're upset about people being murdered in rural South Africa. Oh, so you don't care about black South Africans being murdered? What?
Exactly.
What are you talking about? Oh my gosh. Anyway, it's just crazy. So I don't know if you deal with that much, but hey, listen. Oh, go ahead.
I do. The problem is that it's almost like there's this competition to be the biggest victim.
Yeah.
And I saw that on social media quite a bit, and that's when I fight people on Twitter, and I usually use mockery as a way to try and show that this is actually a ridiculous idea. But I realize that sometimes kind of backfires on you because people think you're really being a total idiot, or you're being totally insensitive, and I understand that. So. So I decided look, we have to, I have to fight this battle a bit differently. So I decided that maybe it's just better you just come out with the facts and you just say, listen, we understand that there are black people getting killed. And if you look at the Fairview situation, let me put it to you this way. I love animals. I have a dog myself. I had a dog since I was a kid, and the reality is that, I wouldn't want someone to kill my dog or any other dog or torture them. I mean, I get worried by those things. And, when someone takes a panga and hits and slashes a horse with that, I also get worried just as much as, someone doing it on a human being, Yeah. So there are these situations that do occur. But when we say that, listen, you shouldn't be slashing horses, we're not saying that we should forget about human beings getting killed. It's just that, and that's the thing. They don't understand that there's another dimension to it, really.
But you know what they're up to. I mean, I'm not talking about the people who perpetrated those acts at Fairview. I'm talking about the politicians and the social activists. This is what they're up to. They want everything to come down to you against them, us against them. So, and people unintentionally creep into this. And then you start hearing comments about racism and bigotry, some of which are true, but most aren't. But let me give you an example. So I had a follower who said something in one of my groups, and is a decent person, and I don't think the person's a bigot or racist, but basically said, well, see, it's just a question of culture, their culture. Like, stop. There weren't 43 million black South Africans out murdering horses and torturing them. It was a number of people in one place, and so you can't group. It's like the same thing when I hear Cyril Ramaphosa say, white people, by their nature, are racist. And that's why we have gender-based violence. What are you talking about? 4.8 million white people in South Africa are the reason that black men go out and beat their partners to death or rape them? No. And by the same token, white toddlers are the reason that white men rape and murder their partners? No. That's idiotic. Yeah. It's idiotic. But yeah, the whole Fairview thing was quite disturbing. I mean, I waited about a week. Plus, I had a good excuse. I was very busy teaching, so I really didn't have time to make a video. But I wanted to throw some more facts on it. And it's almost like a media blackout. There was a guy charged on Tuesday, and nothing has come up. We've heard nothing since then. No more arrest. They have the video. See at least 150, 200 people bum rushing the place. And it's, you know, listen, I raised horses when I was a kid on a farm, and I've had horses around me my entire life. And it's not like a dog. I don't mean to diminish people and their pets. It's not like a dog. A horse is quite a different creature, and it's horrific to think what happened there. They're using pungas to break their legs, and when a horse has a broken leg, you have to put it down. They slash their torsos, and that skin doesn't heal properly. It's just they had to euthanize. So it's really, really sad. And what bothers me is that you see people like Bianca van Wyk and others, Queen Bee, come on there on the social media in South Africa, and they're like, well, and they try that social moral equivalency. But the thing is that where were they in February when the grooms apparently had a dispute and they walked off the job? If they were so concerned about the grooms, why didn't it say February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September? And there's no words from the woke left in South Africa. They don't care. It's like the clicks thing. We find out the gentleman responsible for it happened to be a black South African. Clicks withdrew the thing. It was rude. It was insulting. They took it down. They apologized profusely as quick as they found it. And then the EFF goes after them. And anyway, it's just crazy stuff, man. So any thoughts on either one of those before we go any further, clicks or Fairview?
Okay. So I spoke about Fairview, but with clicks, I mean, it's a perfect example, in my opinion, of what the left wants to do. Yeah. They don't care about what really affects South Africans. No. Remember, Big Daddy Liberty put a tweet out about 3 weeks ago where he said that, hey, you know what? The ANC's been receiving a lot of flack lately, and it looks like there's a racial story that's brewing. That's in the works. That's going to be released in the media soon. And I was like, nah, it can't be. And then guess what? 2 weeks later, the click saga occurs. And then once that click saga occurs, there was the report that was released, which was the unemployment survey. I mean, not unemployment survey, the GDP survey, sorry, the economic growth report. 51% decrease. So then I was thinking like, now you could see, it came off to me like it was a distraction. I'm not saying the government manipulated anything. Yeah. Could have been the greatest coincidence, but the timing just seems to be a bit questionable. But then now you got a 51% decrease in GDP. Many black South Africans are, and when I'm saying black South Africans, I'm not saying it because I'm not saying, hey, power to the blacks, but I'm just saying these guys say that they're for black people, and many black people lost their jobs as a result of these lockdown regulations. And the economy decreased. And guess what? The biggest problem in South Africa is clicks making an insensitive advert. And I was like, this is ridiculous. Come on. It's ridiculous. I mean, I'm like, look, no one can offend you without your permission. I'm like, look, if Click says my hair is bad, it's fine. I'm still going to go to the barbershop, get a haircut, and make myself look good because I've got that, that resilience or whatever you want to call it, really. But it's the reality is that, I don't think South Africans are that insensitive. I mean, there was one video that I saw on Facebook where this EFF member was closing one of the Click stores, and this old lady was like, "Hey, I need to go get my pills. I don't know where else I can get them." Right. And then he was like, "No, Clicks is racist," and explained the whole situation to her. And I was so sad because like here is a woman looking for pills for survival, and you closing down a shop because you want a virtue signal. Yeah, that's like, I'm like, really? Like, can you honestly think for like 2 seconds? Like, some people, they may be offended by the advert, but okay, cool. They'll just be like, okay, I still need to get my polls and I won't buy from Clicks again or something. I don't know. But, but trying to act on behalf of people, which the EFF is trying to do, in my opinion, is not the best idea. And in my opinion, I just think that people need to realize that, look, this party is not fighting for what you think they're fighting for. No. They're just doing it for clout.
No, they're just flim-flam, man. This is what a lot of politicians pick the country. I could go with Slobodan Milosevic in Serbia, the same sort of thing. He used ethnicity and religion to bifurcate society there for his political advantage. And that's the exact same thing EFF is doing. And I've been saying that ever since Juju was kicked out of the ANC. I mean, look, the guy is dirty. How is he wealthy? He's never done a damn thing in his life. He hasn't published a book. He hasn't had a real job. All he's did is suck off the tea to the Youth League and then form this party, which has mysterious links to capital, which funds them. But let's put that all aside. What is EFF doing? Well, they're not doing anything for South Africans because, first off, most of the people who work for Clicks are black. Hey, by the way, Clicks is a BEE certified company. It's black ownership there. And the guy responsible for it, by the way, it wasn't even Clicks. It was Tresemme. It was a freaking hair brand. He just put the ad on a website that they prepared probably for France or the US or somewhere like that. Not that it was any less insensitive, but anyway, so he puts it on there. And with in an hour or two, oh crap, they saw this and they took it down. This is not about that. And the problem here is that where is the arrest warrant for Julius Malema? I seen his words. He wasn't misquoted. He called for violence. He said there will be violence. We will attack Clicks. That's domestic terrorism. If nothing else, it's menacing. It's against the South African Constitution. And I know a few minor EFF leaders were arrested and that sort of thing. But I think the radical wing of the ANC, which has gone from being a minority, in my view, to becoming the controlling part of the party, is just clicking their heels going, yay, Hercules, Hercules, Hercules. Keep it up, EFF, because they don't get their hands dirty. And the EFF does what a lot of them would love to do.
Yeah, definitely so. And it's quite clear what you mentioned now, what we saw. What was really interesting was that there was a situation where one of the ministers was commenting on it and saying that, Clicks was wrong and so forth and so forth. But I'm like, hello, the economy decreased by 51%. Yeah.
No, but Clicks,
people are out of work.
Clicks. No. Yes. Oh,
there we go.
God.
I mean, and that for me just shows you, it almost has a Bell Pottinger vibe attached to it, in my opinion. I think that it almost seems like, and I remember one person was talking about China, and he said China does the same thing. Whenever the economy does bad, they push nationalism. They say it's Donald Trump, it's this or that, whoever, and then the country riles up against America and stuff like that. So it almost seems like this was like the perfect opportunity for the government to really to take the attention away from them, and they capitalized on that very well. Not to say that it was a good thing.
Well, I mean, honestly, it's pretty clear that they're willing to do or allow. Well, I should say allow almost anything to occur as long as it distracts. Because who's talking about the undemocratic, unelected, unaccountable, capricious, avoiding legislation and legislating by decree National Coronavirus Command Council? Does anybody remember that Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma is still around? I mean, not since, when people Zol, and they put the saliva on the paper, because people Zol, but then they share that Zol. Listen, if you're sharing a Zol, you got a problem that's a little bigger than COVID, my friend.
Exactly.
But I mean, but listen, who's talking about the NCCC other than me and Star Trek fans? Because that's the designation on the Starship Enterprise. But I mean, seriously, I talk about it all the time, but no one's talking about it. They've it's like the Wizard of Oz. Pay no attention to that man behind the curtain. The great and powerful Oz. And he's some little short dude, Anyway, but the point is that they're not talking about that, and people should be talking about it. And no one's talking about the black South Africans who were killed by SAPS and SANDF in the opening stages of lockdown back in March and April until they pulled out of the townships. And almost no one's talking about the fact, there's a strange correlation between the fact that South Africa has so many coronavirus cases, and if anyone pays attention, we'll know that in Kaisheta, in Alexandria, and other townships around the country, and many rural areas, there was no presence. People went about their business as if there was no lockdown. They only harassed people in built-up areas, in suburbs, in the urban areas. It's the only place where the SAPs and SANDF were harassing people, and they were going out of their way not to do it to black South Africans because they were terrified they were going to be associated with killing, because they were killing black South Africans.
Yeah.
And so the reason the virus has spread might have something to do with the fact that people weren't actually using any protective measures for several months, and it was just a farce.
Right. And I think that's the whole NCC. I mean, I call it the National Commie Command Council. That's what I call it.
I like that.
And I use that on Twitter quite a bit as a pejorative for this Command Council thing. I think The problem with that counsel is that, and I told this to my friends and family, and I said, listen, these guys, no one can manage a virus. I'm sorry. It's not like a tornado hit us, like the biggest tornado came and just wiped out Gauteng, for example.
Right, and then there's measures to take. You have reaction. Yes. You do triage. You treat people. You bring water in. You do sanitary. There are methods to it, but this is not going anywhere. If they think it's going anywhere, they're smoking crack.
Exactly, and that was the first thing. Then the second thing was that, okay, now there was that whole debate about the economy versus lives, and obviously that has been proven false, because obviously if you kill the economy, people don't get jobs. If they don't get jobs, they can't get an income. If they can't get income, they can't survive. So clearly, they'll starve to death. And that's what. And okay, I'm not saying anyone starved to death, but I'm pretty sure people had some starvation issues during this time, because a lot of people depended a lot on these industries. Some of them depended on what they call in South Africa piece jobs. You know, they live on, like, so for example, they'll have someone who live in the township, and then there'll be someone that he knows that lives in the suburban areas, and then he washes his car, does his garden, paints his house, and then he gets money like that.
Right.
And
I won't lie, I have one little task at a time, or you go fix somebody's roof, or you go do this.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I have family members
who live like that.
Yeah. And you know, I support them like that as well for a lot of domestic activities. So now imagine now you can't do that anymore. That becomes a problem. Now these guys did not consider that. The problem was that I think they overhyped the virus, in my opinion. Yep. All right. They overhyped it
They weren't alone. Look on this side of the Atlantic. Look at China. Look everywhere. Look at the Doctor Who Association.
Yes, definitely. And I mean, at the beginning, I was a kind of sympathetic. Yes, we didn't know really, but now that we know we know a bit more about the virus, we can kind of relax these regulations. And also at the same time, I mean, this is what, and I always tell people that like to support socialism, I'll say, look, here's our government trying to centrally plan our economy, and look what happens. You get a 51% decrease in GDP, and your friend, you know, who relies on the economy can't support himself. So how can you support socialism when we see it right now in operation and it's not working? And I think personally, going from that point, I think we're probably going to have to realize that even in the townships as well, many of them did not adhere to it. I heard of people saying they went to Soweto. They said it was just like any other day.
Any other day. I saw phones, people video, mobile footage while the lockdown was going on. It had timestamps right from the phone, and so it's not from some other time.
Right.
And I talked to people who were honest with me and said, "No, man, people are just going about their business here." I'm like, "That ain't good." I mean, look, I'm not. They had some measures. If we try it, it might have an impact, but. No, it's just ridiculous. But instead, we're arresting people for surfing. The capital offense of surfing, or sitting on a beach, or a mother whose child is acting up, so she stops and steps off the sidewalk to nurse her. And then they drag the toddler or the infant to the freaking police station where no cops are wearing masks and charge them with being out with not wearing masks when masks weren't even mandatory at the time. What the hell?
Exactly. It's absolute madness. And even the contradictions, you know. Within the regulations did not make sense. And I mean, that was a cue to show you that really these guys, they don't have enough information, nor the intellect, nor the foreknowledge to make such perfect regulations.
The intellect. Thank you very much. Listen, one of my hobbies, and when I say hobby, that's something that means I spend a lot of time doing. It's just all part of my profession as an intelligence analyst. But one of my hobbies is epidemiology. And we have never reacted to a pandemic in this fashion. Normally, in a pandemic, what you do is you isolate the vulnerable. You find ways to protect them so they're not exposed to things or it's mitigated. And then you look for a cure. You look for ways to mitigate the disease. And you go about your business with a healthy population. Here, we shut down the world's economy. We create all kinds of social tensions. We cause all kinds of isolation, solitude, suicide, depression, all kinds of issues here. Not to mention what's happened to people not having money, being able to pay their bills, all the stress that comes from that. And healthy populations have not built any herd immunity. They've not been exposed to this. And so, of course, there's a second wave, and a third, and a fourth, and a fifth, as long as we continue this nonsense. It's just crazy. But anyway, I don't want to spend all day talking about the virus because I'm hot full of the virus. Is there a word in Xhosa that's like hot full? Because that's a great word.
Hot full.
Yeah. Is there anything like, you use that in Xhosa too? In Xhosa?
Yeah, like, no, you'll say lento yantika. It's like that. So
okay, dude, that's even harder than Afrikaans. I'm sorry. Lentikieka. Okay, I don't think I even got it.
No. What I said was that thing.
Yeah.
It annoys me. Like Yandika. It's like
Yandika. Okay, yeah. Okay. All right. Actually, that's cool. I like that. Okay, so now listen, Joe Amelia is probably going to disappear and never talk to me again unless I give him credit here. So we have to do this. So let me do a little bit of housekeeping real quick, folks. Okay, so you're listening to Chris White Africa on the Indaba Africa channel. This is Chris in Central Pennsylvania. And yes, I am wearing something rugby related today. It's Rugby United New York, Major League Rugby's professional franchise in New York City, and it's on the back. I'll just turn there. Ooh, there you go. Don't know if you guys can see that.
That is cool.
Yeah, it is pretty cool.
That is cool.
It's real bit also a little pricey, but I won't tell you what it costs. But hang on, I pulled my earpiece out by turning around. Hang on. There we go. Now I can hear again. Yeah, so I'm wearing that. So you're listening to my Saturday stream. This was the original program where I had a live stream and a guest every week, but now we have them all the time. But my guest today is none other than ManPatria, and he's here by popular demand. People asking me again and again and again and again to get him on the channel. I'm like, I don't know who the dude is. Why would I bring him on my channel? Anyway, also I should let you know, Dumo, is that actually you're not really here. Right? Because this is just a channel where old white people are at. Apparently that's, all my moderators are old white people, all white men. And all we talk about is, white supremacy and things like that, apparently.
Oh, I'm in the wrong place.
Yeah, you're in the wrong place. You're in the wrong place, yeah. No, but seriously, hey, listen, we could talk about a lot of stuff here. And, we're already 30 minutes into this. It's like we just started talking. So you want to talk a little bit about the United States? You want to shift a little bit to that? You got some questions or comments, or can we want to riff on a topic?
Right. Yeah, let's talk about the passing of Ruth Ginsburg, if I'm not mistaken.
Ruth Bader Ginsburg, the notorious
Yes.
RBG. What's up?
So, I've got a lot of mixed reactions about her. Not about the death. The death, like everyone is totally devastated. But I think the rulings that she made in the past and so forth, I got mixed reactions on that. So now Donald Trump has to elect someone who's to replace her. Now, my question is, what are the implications of Trump's appointment?
Before I answer that, I realized that I never did say what I was supposed to say about Joe Amelia. Joe pointed out with multiple exclamation points that he too has been talking about it. So sorry, Joe. When I said that people aren't talking about it, I was really referring to the mainstream media. That's kind of what I was getting at. So they just they're silent on all this stuff. It's frustrating. And then there's other questions, but let me okay. So Donald Trump, first off, he doesn't elect her. I think what you meant to say is nominate a replacement for Ruth Bader Ginsburg. I think that's what you meant to say. So what are the implications? Is that what you asked?
Yeah, what are the implications? Yeah.
Well, the implications are this. Number one, in the last year of Barack Obama's presidency, he wanted to nominate Garland Merritt. It's a tough name. That's an Anglo name and it's hard. Garland Merritt, he wanted to nominate for the court, and the Republicans control the Senate, and they refused to bring the nomination to the committee and then bring it to the floor for a vote. And because of the way the parliamentary rules are written by the Senate itself, which the Democrats wrote 20 years ago, that's what the rules were, and they got away with it. I didn't think it was particularly cool, but I didn't make a big stink about it because I knew that if Barack Obama appointed another outrageous liberal on the order of Sotomayor, which says that her key qualification to be on the court is that she's a Latina, and only I can understand Latinas, and we need a Latina voice on the court. Well, why don't we have an Apache voice and a Chiricahua voice? And why don't we have a Colombian voice and a Russian voice and a Jewish? Come on, it's idiotic. What we need is an American constitutional scholar on the court. That's what we need, not a Latina. If you happen to be a Latina who meets those needs, great. That's fine. Anyway, so I was concerned that Obama was going to appoint someone like that in the form of Garland Merritt. And when the Republicans held up the nomination process, I'm like, that's not right, but I wasn't screaming in the streets. This time around, when RBG passed away last week, I did a video and I said, which hardly anybody's watched except my very loyal supporters, but I said I think that the Republicans should stick to the same standard that they used last time. They still control the Senate, but they should wait until the election's over. And then I thought about it, and I realized that with the mail-in voter fraud that it's going on. By the way, it's not going. It is going on. We have reports here, multiple reports in Pennsylvania, which have been verified by state police investigations now of local voting boards throwing out military absentee ballots. I want to talk about the most disgraceful thing on the planet. These people are sacrificing their lives and their families and their relationships overseas. So these jackasses can misbehave like this. Having been one of those people for 30 some years and spent 23 years of my military career deployed overseas, voting absentee my entire career, I find great offense in that. But it's not new. It's not surprising. But the point is there's voter fraud. So with the voter fraud, but that's not the fraud I'm talking about. I'm talking about this mail-in stuff where they're mailing multiple ballots to people's addresses and you just sign it as Mickey Mouse or whatever it says on the form and you send it back in. With all that going on, there is a potential for a constitutional crisis if the election is close. I don't know if it's going to be close, but if there is a constitutional crisis, it'll work its way up to the Supreme Court. Right now, people think it's a conservative court, that it's 5-3. It's not. It's not. Chief Justice John Roberts, who Bush appointed as the Chief Justice, is not a conservative. He was appointed with the expectation he's conservative, but if you watch his decisions, he is a political opportunist. He votes which way the wind is blowing. So when Obama was president, he came up with a contorted decision to vote against the conservative majority and vote with the liberals so that the mandatory clause for insurance, the mandatory for the Unaffordable Care Act was upheld, which is unconstitutional. There's nothing in the Constitution that says you can force an American to pay a fee to be an American. And by upholding the mandate, that's essentially what they did. If you don't pay for insurance, which they're mandating by law, then you must pay a fine to the government. Well, that's unconstitutional. He upheld that. So that time. But then he sometimes sides with the conservatives. So he's not a conservative vote. He's a fence sitter. It goes both ways. So right now people think it's actually 5-3 and they need to get another liberal on there, but it's actually not. It's 4-4. So if we were to go to a decision here, say in December, about, well, what's the outcome of the election, and the court has to weigh in on what's been happening, it's not going to be 5-3. It's going to be 4-4, and we're going to have a hung Supreme Court because Roberts is going to play the opportunist. So given this situation, I'm not opposed to Trump nominating, and he's nominated Amy Coney Barrett this weekend, so she will be the next Supreme Court justice. Now, of course, they'll come out that apparently she was a serial lesbian and sexually assaulted goats when she was 12, and and all kinds of things like that. Like they did against Kavanaugh. And by the way, no repercussions. Nobody went to jail for their lies and their slander and their false testimony. Nothing's happening.
Yeah.
That's
anyway, true.
So I think the implications of this are that Donald Trump gets another nominee. Whether he wins in November or not isn't germane because it's going to happen before then, it looks like. So he will have made sure that the Supreme Court has at least 5 conservative justices and a part-time conservative, so potentially 6 in many cases, which is astounding because the court has been so skewed, so far to the left or just on the edge, knife edge balanced since the 1960s with the Burger Court, which is when we had this nonsense about Roe versus Wade, which allowed abortion, which is the murder of children. And so that's been going on for decades. But this will tilt the court in a conservative direction for the first time in over half a century.
All right. Yeah. Okay. No, that's interesting because so basically, if he doesn't win this election, at least then the Supreme Court will still be leaning more in the conservative direction. Okay, no, that's excellent.
And it's not just the Supreme Court. Trump has nominated and had confirmed more federal judges to the federal bench throughout the country than any president in their first term in the history of this country. Now, in part because we're a much bigger country and more courts, but I mean, even in the last 4 decades when it's been relatively static with the number of positions, he has had a long string of several hundred federal judges, and the impact that's already being felt. For instance, here in Pennsylvania, our governor declared basically, I don't think he knew South Africa was doing it, but basically it's like, I'm going to pretend I'm South Africa. You can't go to work. Shut your business down. So he declared all these martial law, essentially, regulations which have no basis in law back in March, 2 days after you guys started your lockdown. No, the next day after you started lockdown, we went and locked down this county. Anyway, at the time, I said what he did was unconstitutional. It violates the federal constitution, which is supreme, and it violates the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania's constitution, but he did it anyway. And people tried to fight it. Well, they took him to court. Well, here's the tangible impact. A federal judge in Western District of Pennsylvania, the case was taken there. Last week, everything he did was declared unconstitutional, and the state must rescind what he did. Of course, he's ignoring it like typical leftists, and he's going to appeal it to a higher authority. But that federal judge set aside the actions as unconstitutional, and that was a judge appointed and confirmed last year, appointed by Trump and confirmed by the Senate last year. So there's a tangible impact of keeping leftists from overriding our Constitution. Anyway.
All right. No, that's that's one of the battles I've seen between the left and the right, and just to keep that balance. And then what about I don't know if you've been following the story of Breonna Taylor as well.
Yeah.
That has also been a big controversy. What are your thoughts on that?
First, let me answer real quick, Joe, because I got to settle this appeal. Joe,
No problem.
Joe says, could Biden just fire them? No, you can't fire them. You can't fire them. You can only impeach a judge. You can't, and there's a process for that. An appointment is lifetime to the federal bench. That's why Ruth Bader Ginsburg at the age of 87 was still in the court, because she was holding on, praying that Donald Trump would leave before she could, one of the reasons why the left lost their minds when Donald Trump waxed the floor with the sad, wipe, you mean like with a cloth on the server? Hillary Clinton, remember that, about your classified emails? You mean like wipe it with a cloth? One of the reasons why the left lost their mind is because they knew that now their decrepit ancient leftists like Ginsburg would have to hang on for at least 4 years before they could, so they could put a leftist on the court. And she's passed away now. So now Trump keeps getting these Supreme Court nominations. They're losing their minds. Sorry. So you were asking about Breonna Taylor in Louisville. I don't know the situation particularly well about what happened. From what I read in the press is that her boyfriend or partner was wanted by the police, and I don't know if he was involved in drugs, something like that. They went there. He shot at the police. The police returned fire. She was in the house. She was killed. They did a grand jury investigation. The grand jury did not return an indictment for murder or anything like that, but charges were preferred by the prosecuting attorney, district attorney, against one of the officers for reckless endangerment or something like that. But I wasn't there. I didn't see body cam footage, and so I'm not weighing in. What I will weigh in is the despicable, horrendous behavior of the mayor and of the state and of the people responsible for public safety, and the way they pull back, and then these militias show up to ensure property is protected, then counter militias show up. And here's the thing. This is frightening because while the militias, which were mostly white guys, but they weren't all white guys. There were black Americans there. I saw some, and also some Hispanics and Asians. But this was portrayed in such a horrific fashion by the international press. I watched an ITV report about this from the UK. And the ITV report basically said, in a dangerous situation, these reckless militias here on the streets, these white supremacists and racists. And then they go and interview an Asian American, and that's the white supremacist. But anyway, so they did interview this guy known as the, I don't know, with something Viking, some radical Viking or some angry Viking is what they could call himself. And anyway, but then they switched to a group of black militia, and they said, and the charismatic leader, Malik Abdul Shakim, and who's had death threats, and so he has an entourage around him to protect him. And I'm like, death threats from whom? They're on the other side of town. These guys are in town, and all they're doing is protecting property. But they played this whole thing up to divide people based on race. But my concern is this. It only takes one accidental discharge of a weapon when you have 400 people walking around with automatic weapons and semi-automatic weapons before a melee starts and hundreds of people are, and we just have a disaster. And this is what's very disturbing. And the reason that's happening is because mayors and governors are refusing to do their job, to uphold the law in their state. And when you allow lawlessness like this, then people they do things with impunity. And they think get away with it. Did you see the video of Hollywood where the white Prius was involved? Have you seen that one? There's a white.
No, I haven't.
This just came out a day or two ago. There's a white Prius, and it's like, I think it's a news station or maybe it's a police helicopter. But there's a helicopter obviously in the air, and they see this white Prius pull up, and all these people from Black Lives Matter, the domestic terrorist group, are out there, and it just said I'm down to 5 people. What's going on? I love YouTube. It told me I went from 53 to 5 viewers. I know that's not the case in one instant. But this white Prius, and there's a crowd of people there, and what happens is he tries to go around them very slowly, a couple kilometers per hour, so as not to injure people, and people start moving away, and then someone comes up and starts beating on a car, so a bunch of people bum rush him. So he pulls forward. Nobody's injured. He doesn't speed away. Once he's clear, you can see this clear in the footage, he starts driving away. Then a pickup truck full of thugs, which is sitting at that street, starts chasing down the road. He goes about, I don't know, a couple blocks. They whip in front of him, slam and brakes in front of him, so he hits him. Then another car comes in and pins him from behind. One comes from side. They all jump out of their cars with sticks and baseball bats and start beating on his car and trying to drag him out of the car and attack him. He manages to get the car back up, pull away, and take off. The camera follows him for a couple more blocks till he gets to safety. He pulls over. And a police car comes up behind him. The cops come out and draw weapons on him, and they put him in handcuffs and arrest him.
My goodness.
His life was in jeopery. He injured nobody, and none of these thugs that attacked him were arrested. This is what's going on. So it's not just in South Africa. This is now that's a co-opting of the police department to carry out the leftist thuggish agenda. These people are brown shirts. They are stormtroopers. They are the Sturmabteilung SA brown shirts of Ernst Röhm and the Nazi Party in 1933. That's what we're seeing on the streets of America. This is an armed insurrection in our major metropolitan areas, and it's the single greatest intelligence failure of the 21st century. No, not 9/11. That was not an intelligence failure. That's a lie. I was in the intelligence community. We were ignored. We were ignored when people warned about this, and we were prevented from sharing information for other federal agencies. This was intelligence failure. The Federal Bureau of Investigation is responsible to investigate domestic terrorism. They're running around, going down to Alabama or Georgia, where it was, to find this NASCAR driver, Bubba, who was apparently threatened with a noose, which is the handle to pull the door up and down.
Yeah.
17 federal agents went down there and wasted tens of thousands of dollars of government resources over a Jussie Smollett hoax. Another Jussie Smollett hoax. That's what they did. And we've got real domestic terrorists running around this country, and instead they're chasing the Klan. I'm 55 years old, Dumo. I have never met a Klansman in my entire life, anywhere. I saw them on TV when I was a kid once, but I never met them. They're out there, but they're not behind every tree. But
exactly.
Antifa and Black Lives Matter apparently are behind every tree in Minneapolis, in Portland, in Seattle, in Louisville, in Chicago. The list goes on and on. Anyway, there's my rant.
You. An epic one. That's a highlight video right there. No, I mean it's very interesting what's happening in the US right now. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. Following US politics is a great thing. Even if you're a foreigner, you'll even take sides on the issue as well, because hey, you know, it's just in your face all the time. And I mean, I'm intrigued by this. And your predictions. I mean, I know the November elections are that's not too far away, and it's hard to call. But what do you think is going to happen, or how do you think the voters are really going to approach this election?
Good question. Okay, so a couple things at work here. Number one, I'm on the record famous as saying that I was not a fan of Donald Trump. I thought he was a charlatan. I told my conservative friends, my evangelical friends in particular, who voted most of evangelicals ever to vote for any presidential candidate of any party, 90% of evangelicals voted for Donald Trump because they were convinced that he could make a difference on the court. And guess what? They were right. They were right. But I said, listen, this guy's going to break your heart. He's not a conservative, and he's not a Republican. Not that Republicans are conservative, because there's so many of them that aren't. But I said he's not. I said, listen, this guy was for abortion. He pals around with the likes of all the major Hollywood celebrities who are Democrats and leftists, and a lot of his positions over the years have been a little wonky in my view. He's been consistent on a few things, but he's not wanting to get involved in Iraq. He was on that, but my point is that he's going to break your heart. And I also had a grudge against Donald Trump going back to 1983. He bought the New Jersey Generals, the United States football team, and the USFL used to compete in the springtime from February till May instead of trying to compete with the NFL in the fall, September to December. And it worked. It was brilliant. It was a wonderful league. A lot of talented guys, Jim Kelly, Andre Reed, Bobby Hebert, Herschel Walker. The list is long. Anyway, so he bought the New Jersey Generals, and then because he was a billionaire and he was influential, he demanded, plus New York was a big media market, that it was time in the third season to go ahead and compete against the NFL. So they moved the NFL, and 3 weeks later the league folded. So I'm still angry about that. Anyway, no, but I had no compunction about voting for Trump, but as I told people, if they asked me, I said, I don't like the guy, but I'll vote for him because most of what he said makes sense. Now, he's brash, he's rude, he's a bore, but that's Donald Trump. You know, I mean, watch The Apprentice and you'll see that. This is the guy. That wasn't an act on The Apprentice. That was Donald Trump. Anyway, so he ran. I voted for him. And now in January this year, after the ludicrous impeachment trial in which he was impeached for, get this, you ready for this? You can impeach a president for committing a crime, right? High crimes and misdemeanors. He was impeached for, let me run through the list of crimes that the Democratic House referred. There were no crimes. Not a single crime. No violation of the Constitution. No violation of any federal statute. No violation of any state or the District of Columbia statute. All for political purposes. It's like Andrew Johnson all over again after the Civil War. So after that fake impeachment, they ran out of ammo. And Donald Trump was on a sine wave that was just suddenly taking off. And I predicted the first week of January that Donald Trump would win 45 to 49 states in Electoral College. He would win the popular vote by 2 to 4 million votes. That's what I said in January. And then along comes Corona, Ooh, the Wuhan coronavirus, Corona. That's right. So Corona comes along, and Donald Trump is the first international political leader to take steps to do something. In the first week of January, he formed a task force before anybody even heard of this, other than Tucker Carlson, who was telling the world about it on his newscast in the first week of January, going, listen, in the middle of this impeachment, you think it's important? There's actually a very serious situation breaking out in China, in the city of Wuhan, where the Chinese have lost control of a virus that's deadly, and they're locking up social activists, and they've arrested doctors who've tried to warn the world after being ignored. Tucker Carlson, first week of January, watch it. Anyway, so the world is silent. Well, apparently, I guess Trump must watch Tucker Carlson, or he has good advisors, one of the two. So Trump forms a task force. He also offers the Chinese doctors from the National Institutes for Health and the Centers for Disease Control to go to China to help them decode the RNA. Chinese are like, no, thank you. We got it. Anyway, so 31 January, Donald Trump imposes a travel ban from China for all but U.S. citizens who must be in quarantine when they come back. But, of course, most of them violate and spread the virus around. But anyway, so Trump takes action. He's a racist. He's a xenophobe. Last time I checked, Chinese is a nationality. It's a passport. It's not a ethnicity. It's not a cultural group. There are Mandarins. There are Cantonese. There are Uyghurs. The list goes on and on. So how does that make him a racist? Xenophobe? You can make that argument, but that's a weak one. And then he takes other actions, and he gets attacked. So while this unfolds and then we find out that the officials are cooking the stats. New York City goes from 6,300 or 6,400 confirmed case or deaths of COVID to the next day having 10,300. Like, how did that jump in one day?
Exactly.
And they asked Cuomo, and he said, well, we're now including suspected cases. And someone said, does that include people who've been tested? No, these people weren't tested. Oh, so they died of COVID and you have no test to confirm it. Yeah. So now they're trying to lay Donald Trump killed 200,000 people when the number's actually closer to about 10 or 15,000 people who've died from COVID. And if you take that number, that's less than the number of people who died from influenza this year. Anyway, but the point is, but the point here is that, okay, your question, it's a long build up, but here's the thing. I think that so many people are so irritated with these governors and mayors in states like Pennsylvania, New York, New Jersey, California, that they just had enough. And I think that Donald Trump will still win the election. It won't be as large a majority because somehow people are comfortable voting for a man with dementia who's senile and can't string two sentences together. I think that's okay. So I think Donald Trump's going to win. He'll win the popular vote, and I think he's going to win the Electoral College by a wide margin. If he doesn't, I would be astounded. I'm seeing the same anecdotal evidence I saw in 2015, 2016, which gave me the indication that Trump was going to win. And by the way, on the night of the election, I followed the election, and I wasn't streaming then, but I called the election at 9:30 that night for Donald Trump, 9:35. Of course, the media refused to do it until 2:50 in the morning when it was so obvious, but they just couldn't believe that Trump had won. But when I projected what was left of the vote here in the state of Pennsylvania after Florida was called for him, then I looked at it and I said, he's going to win by 70, 75,000 votes in the state. He won by a little over 70,000 votes. Most of those right here in the county that I'm in. Over 50,000 of the votes that gave him Pennsylvania came from this county. And I said he's going to win. And he won. I'm predicting a Trump victory, and I'm predicting a significant Trump victory. But if I'm wrong, I'll be sad because that means that it's the end of America. But I'm predicting a Trump victory. And I'm also predicting that Donald Trump will poll a record percentage of the black vote. When I say a record in the modern era. Of course, after the Civil War, almost every black American voted Republican for a century until the vote was hoodwinked by the fake caring regime of King Franklin Roosevelt himself.
Right. Wow. Thank you for that. Now it's like I'm interviewing you. It's like you're on my show now.
No, that's what I said. We're gonna go back and forth here. You know, Hugo, who's in France, Hugo Kruger says Chris speaks at a rate of 2,500 words per minute. Yeah, but unfortunately, I can't type at that speed. That's what sucks.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So hey, let's. What other questions you got about the U.S. or you want to talk about? Let's talk Africa. Somewhere in Africa.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
Right.
So, I mean, Africa's been kind of a strange case, and I had some students with some intelligence analysts this week, and we gave them a project to do for the capstone. And one of the topics came up. They were talking about disease, and they chose the corona they were talking about. And I asked a question. I asked these are intelligence analysts. I said, so let me ask you this question. early on, some of the speculation why Africa hadn't been hit particularly hard. Now, I think Africa has been hit hard. We just don't have test kits to prove how many people have been exposed, but that's another story.
Right.
But I said, one of the reasons Africa, they say, hasn't been hit hard is the speculation is it's a youthful population, which is true. I mean, the median age in Niger is 14.9 years. Can you imagine that?
Wow.
Yeah.
That is young.
That is young. So much of and Uganda's not much better. It's like 15 or 16, but and Mali's 15.8. So much of the continent is young, and young people weren't falling susceptible to this, at least what we saw in the first several months of it. So do you think that's, and that someone said, no, that's just a red herring. That's not true. Well, what are your thoughts? Do you think Africa is doing okay? Or, I mean, we don't have a lot of data, but what's your sense of it, Dumo?
Well, I'm when it comes to Africa specifically, well, it depends on the country talking about. So, but I mean, if you look at for example, let's say Zim, for example, how they doing? So again, do they have the capability? Do they have the data and all of that? We just really do not know. I think they'll do all right. They'll try to do their best. I mean, I saw Uganda, they tried to do something, they also had regulations and so forth. But I think, I don't think it's crazy. So the thing about Africa, if you look at the leadership, there really isn't this battle between the left and the right that's big as in South Africa, right? It's like if you go to like Rwanda, you got Kagame, who's like a dictator. He just says, okay, this is what happens and this is how it goes, And then you've got Uganda, Museveni as well. Again, to them, it's just like, to those people in those dictatorships, to them, it's just like, okay, this guy makes the rules, we'll just follow and that's it, right? And then life goes on. But then when it comes to South Africa specifically, I can talk about that, right? About South Africa because that's where I live. I think personally, if we could handle it was of great concern, because before the coronavirus, I mean, our healthcare system has been questioned with regards to capacity, and also has been questioned with regards to if we could handle anything. Because I heard some people, if they wanted hip replacement surgeries, they had to wait like 6 months and so forth. And now when the pandemic was around, the government is like, oh my goodness, we don't know if we can handle this. And our healthcare system's already overrun, or that's what they felt. So then now we have to like clamp everything down just to save a few beds in a hospital. And like when you weigh it up, and I'm not a utilitarian, but when you weigh it up, it's just like, oh my goodness, you don't have enough beds, but you shut down everything else, which I think, in my opinion, it doesn't make sense in the long run. So I personally think that, yes, at the beginning, they were not sure, but at the same time, I do believe that they shouldn't have prioritize COVID-19 over everything. They should have said, okay, listen, this is a virus. We don't have a cure for it. Apparently, I even heard that the other coronaviruses, there's no cures for that as well. So, I mean, now if that is the case, then, really maybe what we should have rather done. And again, I'm saying this with the benefit of hindsight. Maybe what we should have rather done is that maybe we just should have had a plan where we say, okay, cool, look, if someone's got corona, this is how we treat them. If they are showing heavy symptoms and they are young, then we give them an ICU bed and stuff like that. But then, of course, that alcohol thing came where they said that alcohol-related diseases were taking up too much space. And then one doctor in PE, I remember, and I don't know if she's a doctor, but I remember it was like a scripted interview. I think it was scripted, let me put it that way. The health minister, Zweli Mkhize, he was talking to this doctor after they did this ban. And then he says and he asked the doctor, well, what do you think about this alcohol ban? Has it really helped you? And the doctor's like, yes, it has helped us. Oh, we're seeing the difference. Oh, it's so great. And I'm like, oh my goodness. And you say this in front of the camera, like it's like reality TV. It's not real. It's just, not real. Right. So I just feel, in my opinion, that with regards to South Africa, we had a lot of people that had good intentions, right? And I think the government had good intentions, but the problem is that they were very ignorant and they did not pay the price for being wrong. And because they don't pay the price for being wrong, it was very easy for them to make these blanket regulations out of the air, and which affected many people negatively in the long run. So yeah, that's my rant on South Africa. But Africa, I'm not so clued up on with regards to the response to Corona.
No, that's okay. But I leaned forward, but I realized it was a rant, so I held back. I would say, Dumo, that you're being very generous with the ANC, that people had good intentions. I, too, took a objective approach to this when they first started. But it seemed very quickly to me that they were making decisions. And I love how the left always attacks, especially conservatives, as being anti-science. I'm not anti-science at all. In fact, it's the left that's anti-science. They deny when life begins at conception, that's scientific. They deny the fact that there are two sexes. Apparently you can have 77 sexes or 150 genders. That's not scientific. The list goes on and on. Now, they deny the history of climate change as if it's just something man just invented and only we can affect it, not as if solar issues or the rotation of the planet or, time. Anyway, none of that matters to them. So they're the science deniers. It just drives me nuts. But it seems pretty clear to me. I mean, remember, look, the ANC, I remember years ago, the ANC was all crowing about, we are very egalitarian. 43% of our members of parliament are women. And my response to that was, yeah, that's great, but only 6 of them are competent. The rest of them are just there because they're sleeping with somebody. So what's your point? So you got a lot of women. That doesn't make you competent. Just like you got a lot of men doesn't make you competent. That's a stupid statistic. How about talking about the ones who are actually effective and can, walk and chew up? Not the ones that say, why do we need farmers? We get our food from Pick and Pay or Checkers.
You see,
when I know that in Northwest, they're not going to Pick and Pay and Checkers, they're going to Choppies. Anyway.
Exactly. and that's the thing. It just shows you the disconnect that these guys have with the general population. I remember Lindiwe Zulu was saying that, she said she was so shocked that the lockdown has caused so much poverty. And I'm like, Haibo, Sisi, don't you like you're the minister of small businesses. Well, I shouldn't say Haibo, sis. I should be saying Haibo, Mama. Are you serious? Can you not see this, right? And the thing is that it's typical. And now when you see ministers making comments like that, it kind of makes you feel that these guys really don't know. They actually do not, and they're very naive. Absolutely
naive, clueless, and not educated. I mean, look, listen. I don't mean to disparage the ANC, but it's becoming harder not to disparage them. I was very generous. If you go back and watch my video, there's a link on the channel down there, but for when I spoke at the Great Decisions presentation at the Army War College, I was wearing my fatigues. It was January 2018 or April 2018, something like that. It's an annual series that the Ivy League schools do. The Army War College participates in. You get speakers of note who talk on topics. That year, the topic was South Africa's fragile democracy, and I said, I'll do it, but I don't really say South Africa is a fragile democracy because of the strength of its institutions and independent press, lots of civic organizations. And I said, it has a lot of challenges. So that was me 2 years ago. And I was very generous to the ANC, even though they didn't deserve it. But not anymore. Not anymore. I used to say anecdotally, the thing about the ANC is it's 60% full of committed, patriotic South Africans who are dedicated to a market economy and racial harmony and the rainbow nation sort of concept. That's what they're committed to, and multi-party democracy. And 40% who are leftists, dyed-in-the-wool, let's kill all the white people and chase them into the ocean. And I said, South Africa will be in trouble if the day approaches when that 60-40 balance becomes even, and South Africa will really be in trouble if it goes the other way. When we saw Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma compete against Cyril Ramaphosa at the party Congress a few years ago in 2017, when we saw that happen, and we saw how close it was, just a handful, 35 votes would have swung it, and NDC, she would have been in charge. And it was clear to me. And then we look at his cabinet. He appoints all these Zuma criminals and thugs and useless crap heads to be in his cabinet. I'm like, this guy's not in charge. He is not in charge. He is walking a razor line, and he has a very short window. And I was generous to Matama, even though he didn't deserve it because he'd been the deputy president. He was responsible for Marikana in many respects because of his role with the Platinum Company. Anyway, so I said he's walking a razor-thin line. But within short order, the guy comes out and proves that he's a talking head of all the leftists in the ANC. White people are racist. What the hell is that? The head of a state saying something like that? Do you honestly believe that? He doesn't believe that, but he's panning for the cameras and for a certain audience. And the reason the ANC has gone this way is because they failed, and when they failed, their party fractured. First into Cope, because the technocrats lost when Thabo Mbeki was booted out after the Polokwane massacre. That's what I call it, the Polokwane massacre. Not that I don't like Thabo Mbeki. He's got a fragile little ego, and he caused hundreds of thousands of South Africans to die from HIV and hundreds of thousands of children to be born with it unnecessarily. But after the Polokwane massacre, South Africa Anyway, I'll stop there. I could go on for hours. But
The Polokwane massacre.
that's right.
Yeah,
The
no,
Polokwane massacre.
that was a sad day for me, really. But
Yeah. It's just, well, for me, it's sad because it's not democratic. So they remove him as president of the ANC. Okay, fine. So then he resigns as president of South Africa. Wait a second. What's more important, the party or the republic? Clearly, the party matters more. And by the way, it's not just the ANC. The DA is the same way. All parties are. Their party matters more than the country, no matter what they tell you. And that's the sad thing about South African politics. When you vote for a party and not for a candidate, this is the nonsense you get. Of course, when you vote for the candidate, not a party, you get Donald Trump too. So is that good? Is that bad? You make the call.
Well, yeah, it's an interesting situation. But I remember I had a podcast yesterday with a guy by the name of Germinal G. Van. He's a libertarian. He lives in Chicago, and he's from Cote d'Ivoire. And he was talking about dictatorship.
No. Hold on. Listen, I got to correct you. Donald Trump is a racist and a xenophobe, and he stopped all immigration to America, especially for people of color, because he hates people of color. So I don't believe that an Ivorian in Chicago. I think he was tricking you. He was actually in Abidjan and pretending he probably had like a photo of Chicago skyline behind him. Because Donald Trump's a racist. We don't have brown people in this country.
Right. Yeah. They don't. I don't know. I should have told him yesterday. Thanks for telling me, Chris. I should have called him out like you called him from Abidjan.
He might have even been wearing a mask. He's probably some old white guy with a beard. I don't. Anyway.
Yeah. So he was talking about dictatorships, and he had this argument that maybe some countries actually need like that strong hand because of the tension. So he used Rwanda as an example.
Yeah.
Where he said there was the genocide, and he said that, well, he felt that Rwanda was not ready for a democracy, and Kagame, they needed like a dictator, like a guy who just says, okay, you know what? I will take over the politics. The political doors are closed, but when it comes to the economy, you guys can do whatever you want. But when it comes to politics, I'm the go-to guy. And he says that, apparently he says that in some African countries, that actually would work. He didn't say in South Africa if it would, but then I was just thinking to myself, I thought, maybe we do need that type of thing in South Africa, because like if you look at our education levels, if you look at how to pass matric, it's really sad. The bar's been set so low, and a lot of people do not meet that bar, right?
Oh, come on, man! 30% is a high standard.
Ridiculously high, but you understand where I'm coming from. And now you have this, and then you got a rising left wing party like the EFF, who are willing to use violence to get their way. So you can't be civil in those type of discussions with them because they really feel they got the moral high ground. That doesn't matter what they do. It's justified because the goal that they're trying to achieve is so pure. That's what they believe. Now, I was thinking like, I was tempted with the idea of dictatorship, but then I realized that, you know what? Let's say we do have a dictatorship in South Africa and then we just close all political doors. But then I'm like, well, what's stopping another person from, performing a coup d'etat on that dictator? And then it just goes on and on and on and on and on. So it looks like, a lot of things probably need to be, the right conditions need to be there for a dictatorship to work. But yeah, man, South Africa, I'm just kind of worried, man, because, the far left is really taking massive strides in the directions that they want, while the right or even the center they just seem to dwarf what the left is. Well, they're being dwarfed by the left. Let me put it that way.
Yeah, well, both of us have been called out by two of the viewers, so I'll get to that in a second. But before we get to that, my concern in South Africa is less the left. In my view, the EFF will plateau at 15% support. Honestly, okay. I think that's their peak. They're not going to go beyond that. I've been saying that forever, and I haven't changed my position on that. What we're seeing is a lot of illicit activity that's not being dealt with, just like we're seeing here in the States. And this is a tactic by those in governance to deflect and take attention away. Why in the world are people with pickaxes digging up coal tar roads on the highway in Durban, and there's no SAPs out there arresting people? It didn't happen in 3 seconds. They're out there for hours doing it, stopping traffic, causing chaos, and SAPs does nothing. But they knock bikers off their bikes during a lawful protest rally in Cape Town. Come on. That's ridiculous. Yeah. So this lawlessness, what happened at the racetrack, And then a couple of days after that, when peaceful protesters showed up outside the gate to show sympathy for the horses, they were harassed, and that was dispersed. SAPs could show up for that, but not for the abuse that happened to horses. And what about the rural murders? And also the media with their constant depiction of it only being white South Africans, which causes a bifurcation in society, when those who follow the statistics in the rural area know that, yes, white South African farmers are being targeted, but lots of colored especially, but also black and Indian South Africans who are on farms are being murdered viciously too. But they rarely make the headlines, and it's very disturbing. Okay, so here's where we're called out. John Jarvis said that Cyril had no choice regarding the NEC. Come on, Chris, you're letting yourself down in the stream. I don't think I'm letting myself down. Maybe I said something that was a little confusing. So my point with Cyril Ramaphosa was that he's not a change agent. He's not a revolutionary person who will change the path of the ANC. And ever since Juju was evicted, the ANC didn't learn its lesson from Cope. It should have learned its lesson. It should have cleaned up its act, and it didn't. And then Juju left, and people went with him, and they fractured again. They still got 58% of the vote of those who bothered to vote last year, so they're still not learning the lesson, and he's not going to change. The only reason the ANC is suddenly in favor of EWC, which they haven't done much on, by the way, and since they brought it to the table, is because they feared the break of the party, and we saw that with EFF. Now, you're being called up by Jim G saying a libertarian who says sometimes you need a bit of force. Oh, no, not you too, Dumo. Force is for the defense.
Yeah, so, no, if I said it correctly, I said that I was kind of intrigued by the idea of dictatorship, but then I said afterwards that, but wait a minute, if you use a dictatorship, what's stopping the next guy from coming and performing a coup d'etat on you and instilling another dictatorship? And then that cycle continues. So
yeah, no, I got you.
That is so maybe I didn't say it clearly, but that viewer was right. But I mean, in libertarians, I know a lot of libertarians who say that the government should only perform very few functions, and one of them is having a military and protecting the borders and stuff like that. So from others. So then they would use force. Yeah. And also libertarians also believe in gun ownership as well.
Oh, absolutely.
And so
but you guys also believe in weed. That's where we part company.
Sorry. Sorry, my headphones got disconnected there. Yes, you said about weed.
Yeah, you guys also believe in weed. That's where we part company. I'm a conservative. I'm not a libertarian.
Right. Yeah, I think the drug debate. I'm still on the fence on that, because the nice thing about being a libertarian, you don't have to you don't have to be like Milton Friedman per se, because Milton Friedman, he believed in the whole abolishing drug laws and everything like that. I understand the rationale behind it, but again, when it comes to like hard drugs, the problem is that the only challenge I have, and I'm trying to figure this out, and I'm still on this journey, is what about these drugs that have these mind-altering effects on you, right? Like crazy mind-altering effects. Now, there's two positions you can have here. You can say, well, we should stop it, or you can say you should allow it, and if people take it and they willingly take it, knowing the risks associated with it, then that's their problem. So, that seems to be the options at this point in time. But I still think that when it comes to drugs, look, I don't smoke marijuana. I don't take any hard drugs because, it causes a lot of damage as well. Even marijuana as well, there's a lot of studies showing that it's not the best thing to take. And look, and even now, I went on a carnivore diet, and because of what sugar does. I'm trying to lose weight right now. And I've been having a high carb, high sugar diet, and it's not doing well. It's not helping me, right? And now sugar, I'm not going to say sugar should be banned, but I'll tell people, hey, man, don't eat sugar. It's not good. But then here's the thing. Sugar is not like heroin. It's not like opioids. Like look at opioids, for example. Those were drugs that were administered over the counter. And apparently the effect that they had on people was very negative, because apparently, like, if you had a broken leg and they gave it to you, it made you feel amazing, like great. And some people, they had massive withdrawal symptoms as a result. So I think the drug situation is a bit complicated. But again, the libertarians will also say that, listen, if you ban drugs, you're going to create cartels. So I was just like, okay, I understand that. And then the cartels, they also have a negative societal effect. So it's like, well, if you legalize it, the cartels go away. But if the cartels go away, what's the price for not having cartels? So it seems like you're going to have open air drug markets, maybe. I don't know. So it's for me, it's still complicated. It's not set in stone for me.
Well, as you were giving the Libertarian Manifesto, Jim G was supplementing it with comments over here as a Libertarian. So pointing out to me saying, your body, you decide. Well, there are limits to that. And Gareth says that sugar is worse than heroin. Well, sugar can be very bad for you, but I'm dead sexy. I don't weigh 500 pounds. I consume sugar like it's bubble gum. I can do without it. I'm not addicted to it. I was out in the mountains, had no sugar for a week, no ill effects. My teeth aren't rotten. I still have my original teeth. They're still here. My point is that, like all things, in moderation. That's the key. Right. So you have to, even though I love sugar, I know when to quit. So yeah, no, it's the libertarian thing is interesting. In America, libertarians are kind of an odd group because we have a libertarian party, but it never gets more than 1 million votes. It's kind of weird. But a lot of people who are libertarian tend to vote conservative a lot of times. Some vote to the Democrats. But it's an interesting position to be in. But for me, it's let's talk economics a little bit here. So you work for SAA. My position is well known when it comes to parastatals, whether it's in the United States or the European Union or South Africa. I think parastatals are a cancer on society. And people say, well, but if you didn't have parastatals, you wouldn't have electricity in America. If you didn't have parastatals, you wouldn't have utilities. You wouldn't have any telephones. Yes and no. And one can make an argument that in a developing country, at a certain stage, one can make the argument that maybe a parastatal is a good thing. I wouldn't support it, but I'm saying you can make a legitimate argument. We could have a debate about it. But in South Africa, South African Airways simply, like for instance, the government stops all flights except for repatriation flights, and all the contracts go to SAA, not to Comair.
Exactly.
And so what's that all about? That's not right.
Right.
And the reason why SAA is in the shape it's in is because of the abysmal management. You put incompetent people in there who did things, not just corruption, but incompetent things. And instead of making the right decisions, so we see Ethiopian, which is a parastatal, but it's run as a private corporation. The government owns it, but the board of directors is independent. They're not influenced. The only thing the government ever does, and I live in Ethiopia, so I've seen it up close and personal working with the government. The only thing the government does is they constantly promote Ethiopian. So anytime there's an event, they invite Ethiopian Airlines. They, hey, this is Ethiopian. It's our national carrier.
Right.
And they promote them. But they don't go, okay, look, you have to hire this number of people. You have to hire Tigrayans. You have to do this. This is your, they have nothing. It's a private, and look at Ethiopian. It's all over the continent. It has opened up routes that have never existed before by any airline. Africans can get from one place to another in places they can never get to. They can afford to do it. Now, most of the planes are pretty good, but I've ridden other crappy planes. The one that goes from Uganda through Rwanda to Ethiopia, that one sucks. It's falling apart. It smells like a toilet. But anyway, but also been there nice planes. But Ethiopian, even Kenya Airways has increased. You see Turkish Airlines all over West Africa now and into Somalia.
Yeah.
Brussels Airlines, which was a twice failed Sabina, then SM Brussels, and now it's Brussels Airlines, is successful with all these routes in Africa. And what happened to South African Airways? They should have been the airline that conquered Africa. It is sad. They're down to 9 aircraft, less than 2,000 employees, and they can't emerge from bankruptcy because it's a disaster. Now, we could just keep going and talk about ESCOM. What a shameful legacy that is. ESCOM,
Exactly.
ESCOM has 53,000 million megawatts, whatever it is, of power installed. On any given day, the best they can deliver is 60%. That's a good day. How embarrassing is that? South Africa generated 42% of all electricity on the entire continent of Africa at the end of apartheid. The entire country. 34 million people in that country, and it produced 42% of all the electricity in the entire, including North Africa. That's insane. And today, you can't get power. You've got load shedding all the time. It's embarrassing.
Right. It's very similar to what happened in Venezuela. When they took over the oil rigs and the oil company there, and they didn't pay attention to infrastructure, and they didn't know that infrastructure. I mean, they probably were warned that, listen, if you don't take care of the infrastructure, it's going to be a problem. It's going to really affect us. And they just said, whatever. It's not going to be like that. They never, because they never ran something like this before. And I think the same thing happened with ESCOM as well. Even within the late 1980s, even with the apartheid government. But that's when it started. But then now it just became even worse from 2000 onwards, right? And I just think that, like I said before, like they're going to have to, grit their teeth and say, listen, guys, you know what? we can't do this anymore. We're going to have to allow other players in the market. And that's it. We may have to, and if we lose capacity, if we lose employees, those employees can go to the new companies, and so forth. But they don't want to do that because there's this vision that, no, we need to have they say ESCOM has a mandate, and because it has a mandate, therefore it must still stand. I'm like, well, it's not working. And to quote Milton Friedman even said he has no problem with government organizations. What he says is that when they fail, there is no mechanism to eliminate that. In the private market, if I start a business and it fails, it's gone.
Yep.
And a more efficient one will come in, or an alternative will come in. But with the government, whenever they fail, it's like, no, they need more power, they need more money, they need more of this, more of that, more of everything. And that's the problem with parastatals, is that the government can never let them go because they feel they got this mandate that they're going to achieve at some point in the future, but there's no good reason for them to think that.
No, absolutely, and it's like the investor who just can't let go of that attachment they have to a company that's failing, and they put more money in it, and then they wind up with nothing. And that's really what's going on here. It's ESCOM is, and this ridiculous monkeying around. Well, we'll break it into 3 entities. That's even worse. So now you have a power generation entity that has to negotiate with the transmission entity, that has to negotiate. What the hell is that? That's stupid. Allow private sector competition, and ESCOM will be buried in a matter of years. It would be buried in a matter of years. And South Africans will have reliable electricity. It's as simple as that. But it goes beyond that. It's also the other political machinations. So, of course, the ANC loves to emulate their European idols. They always complain about Europe, but the Paris Climate Accord, which is an utter disaster. Did I just say that? Yes. You know why? Because there's no penalties. There's no constraints. No one is it's ridiculous. And it leaves Brazil out of it, leaves Russia pretty much out of it, and leaves China. They get away with no penalties. And so South Africa likes to sign up to these things for climate. So what have they been doing for the last 10 years? Well, before the recent crisis, they were decommissioning coal-fired power stations in Mpumalanga and other parts of South Africa. Instead of building new plants, they took out the ones because they're burning coal without producing anything new. No solar thermal, no hydroelectric, no nuclear plants. And so they reduced generating capacity and didn't replace it. And what you were talking about is already starting to grade at the end of apartheid. Well, that's because running a utility has to have a strategic focus. You can't be focused on 3 years. You have to be focused on 30 years because it takes time to build new generation plants, new transmission lines, to expand the network, to changing technology. And that vision is lacking. So even if I were to take over ESCOM today, I couldn't fix it for 20 years. It would take that long to fix this mess. Now, SAA, I could fix overnight. It's very easy. I would liquidate them. By the way, someone mentioned Mango's in trouble. Yeah, because they belong to SAA. They're part of the SA group. That's their part. Kulula is part of Comair. There's no little independent airline running around. You guys have been hoodwinked. Mango belongs to South African Airways, and it's in trouble. Kulula, which was doing well, is in Comair, but Comair went into business rescue or bankruptcy, as we say in the English-speaking world. Business rescue, that's a comical euphemism. But they went into business rescue not because they were inept, but because the government shut down their flights and they couldn't generate revenue. And in order to lower their operating costs, they said, let's just go into bankruptcy. Hopefully Comair will be coming out of that soon. We'll see, but I wouldn't hold my breath. Because listen, a little bit of a rant here. So Dumo, so on October 1st, I can fly to South Africa, except I can't. You know why? Because if I want to, they say I have to have a negative COVID-19 test within 72 hours of arrival. Here's the deal, all right? I go try to get a test. Well, I don't get to pick when I get the test based on my healthcare provider. I can't just get one. It's not like you can go to the local pharmacy and go, here, give me a test kit. You have to go to your provider. So they'll say, okay, we'll give you a test a week from Wednesday. Okay, a week from Wednesday, I go in and I get tested, but my flight's this Friday. Now, I've had my 72 hours, but I can't get a test. But even if I get the test, okay, here we go. So I get the test. It takes 48 hours to get the results. 48 hours. Now I have less than 24 hours to get to South Africa. It takes 14 hours to get there, best case, from Atlanta. I have to get to Atlanta. It takes a whole day to get to Atlanta. So it's already out of date. And then the idiotic response is when I arrive in South Africa, if I don't have a test that's negative within 72 hours, and now I'm doing 2,500 words per minute because I knew you were checking earlier. But if I don't have a test within 72 hours when I arrive in South Africa, then I have to be in quarantine for 2 weeks. What kind of moronic horse manure is that? Why don't you let me sit in a holding area for 48 hours while you wait for my test results and prove that I don't have COVID and let me go on my merry way? No, you're going to jam me and make me waste thousands of dollars to stay in a hotel that I don't get to pick, that you choose, and I'm going to be crowded in with thousands of other passengers who are piling in, some of whom have COVID, and now I get it because your idiotic governance. Your country is so screwed. No, anyway.
It is screwed.
I couldn't help it. Sorry.
No, definitely, Chris. I mean, again, it goes back to the contradictory laws that, you want to stop something, but then the mechanisms or the means that you use to try to stop it increases the risk of it spreading. So it's so paradoxical, in my opinion.
There you go. That's the word, paradoxical. That's what it is. Here's the thing, Dumo, is that George Orwell with Animal Farm in 1984, he seems rather tame as to what we're dealing with in the world today, especially in South Africa and the United States. This is absolutely insane. The world has lost its mind.
Mm-hmm. I agree. It has lost its mind. And I think this is why in South Africa we have to really rely a lot on civil society organizations. I said this on my podcast as well. I say that, listen, if you're not going to donate to me, at least donate to a civil society organization that fights for liberty, and, donate to them, because these are the guys that are really going out there and really trying to give it to the government. So, yeah, I mean, that's what we need. We need that resistance, man.
No, absolutely. Well, speaking of civic organizations, I just did a little subliminal suggestion there. Over your face, I popped up a Farmers Aid South Africa. There it is again. This is to try to subliminally get people to donate to Farmers Aid South Africa. But in the meantime, Penny is just giving a super chat. She said, "Rant, Chris, rant." Yeah. No, listen, with a little humility, we all get things wrong. We make mistakes. We get things wrong. Famously, a couple of days ago, when I think Brett asked me a question about Shaka, and for some reason I was thinking Dingani. I started explaining, and everybody's like, no, that wasn't Shaka. That was Dingani. I'm like, oh, dude, okay, sorry. Oh, boy, they just whoosh. So you know what it told me is that in the 6 or 8 months that I've been doing this stream, or 6 months I've been doing the stream, it just tells me that I've never been wrong, because that's the first time they caught me. No, I'm just kidding. No, it's actually funny.
You're really wrong, eh?
Yeah, exactly. Hey, so let me ask you this question, Dumo. So on Heritage Day, I celebrated 3 specific linguistic and cultural groups in South Africa. My focus were the 3 groups that I know the best. I know Afrikaans-speaking South Africans the best, and the Tswana people of South Africa, or is on neighboring Botswana, we say Setswana, but and like the Bafokeng people, all those people, and then of course the Basotho people, who are closely related to them. So that's the 3 groups. They're also clustered up there in the Free State, Northwest, and Gauteng. So I celebrate. There wasn't time to celebrate everybody. I mean, and I did mention the Khoi San as well, but I kind of celebrated that on Heritage Day during my stream, and it was pretty cool. I get really annoyed, frustrated, and angry about the intentional effort to radicalize and racialize everything in South Africa. There are racists. Let's not deny that. There are racists, and by the way, they come in all stripes and colors. But the reality is that most South Africans I've ever met, some might be bigoted because they've learned the wrong things about other people because they just don't know. But most South Africans I meet are honest people who don't necessarily have trouble with their neighbors. And that's whether they're Zulu, they're Xhosa, they're Venda, they're Tswana, they're Afrikaners, the Boer, or most people. But South Africa is being painted as a society in which it's full of a bunch of white racists. And at the same time, the people saying that are discriminating massively against coloreds, and also against other black South Africans, and against Indians as well. And I don't know, do you see this, or am I smoking something? Because it really drives me nuts.
Right. That's another. Yeah. Talking about colored people, and again, for the American listeners, I mean colored, South African coloreds. Okay. I've heard of stories that and I'm gonna get a colored person on my podcast soon, but I've heard stories that, like, they say during apartheid, they were too black to be white, and now they're too white to be black. Yeah. And they've been kind of marginalized. I've heard of people that were perceived as colored going to university, trying to get into programs, and they can't get in because they said, sorry, we met our colored quota. But then they would allow black people that got a lower score than them into it because they need to get a quota for blacks. Right. And again, I can understand the resentment they feel, and even for Indians as well, the same thing happens as well. I see that quite a bit, and my heart goes out to them. My heart goes out to them. Really, I don't think it's fair. I don't think the state should make any affirmative action laws. I do believe that it should be made only done by private institutions, alone if they want to do it, and then they should pay the price for it. So if they're going to say, listen, we want an all-black company, and then the society reacts angry against that, they're paying the price. I don't think the government should mandate it and then the companies implement and then they pay the price. So I don't believe that. However, I also want to talk about really guys trying to intentionally racialize things. Look, South Africa is a nice country. You know, you'll get along with almost anyone in this country. There are those people who will say a few bad things along the way, but generally, you know, from my experience, they are good people. And if you look at even the panel on my podcast as well, I mean, I'm Xhosa. We have also someone who's Tswana, and then we have 2 Zulu people as well on it as well. So it's quite diverse.
Hold on a second. Hold on a second. I don't see any Indians on that podcast. I think you're just a bunch of bigots.
You know, I would like, you know what, guys, if you're Indian and you want to be on the podcast, please, we would love to have you. Right. And I just think that, you know, I always say this on Twitter, stay away from identity politics. I always say that all the time because it's such a massive distraction, like to what we can really achieve as South Africans. You know, that's why I always say, forget BEE, implement free markets, you know, focus on education, you know, you're not trying to say teach proper values, you know, that enhance people and enhance society as a whole. That's what we need. And unfortunately, again, there will be those people who benefit from actually creating racial tensions, and you know who they are. Yeah. And these are like race hustlers. And again, this is why one person said on our podcast yesterday that maybe we do need a dictatorship to kill that incentive, so that you know, so if there's a dictator who hates identity politics, he can always shut it out. But again, this is not to promote dictatorship. I'm just saying that there probably are more innovative ways from a democratic or political perspective to shut out that incentive. And I just haven't thought of any yet. But if you can think, if you got some, that'll be great. But South Africans are great people. You'll find that like you know, you'll go somewhere in the rural areas. These guys just want a simple life. All they just want to do is go to work,
they want to
come back.
They want to get along.
Exactly. Yeah. Watch TV, and that's it. And send their kids to school, and that's all they want.
Yep.
And then, like, once you see that, you realize that really these politicians, you know, they're not really worth much.
No, and they're not serving the interest of South Africans. That's my point, which is so disturbing. You know, so Paulie just gave a super chat, says, loving the chat. Thanks, Colonel. Thanks a lot, Paulie. But you know, it drives me nuts because the world was incensed, and I think rightly so to many degree, about what was happening under apartheid, particularly in the last 20 or 30 years of apartheid. And so the world galvanized, whether it took action or not, people galvanized. There was outrage, there were protests, there were parades, there were fundraising campaigns, there were efforts to help get South Africans out so they go to school elsewhere. Lots of things were happening. Yet the world's silent about what's happening in South Africa today. The world could not be bothered. And what I tell people, because a lot of South Africans ask me, how come Trump isn't doing anything? How come London doesn't do anything? And they're not necessarily talking about white South Africans. They're talking about South Africans in general. And I say, you have to understand that the world doesn't see South Africa for what it is today. The world sees South Africa through the lens of April 27th of 1994. And the end of apartheid, people queuing up for hours to go vote for the first time in their life. And it's the Rainbow Nation. So what's there to see? Everything is kumbaya when it's not. And in fact, in the 2 years plus since Sir Ramaphosa's taken over, it's taken a decisive turn downwards. Even without Corona, South Africa was in a bad shape. It was in recession. It was already declared junk bond status. Moody's finally conceded that South Africa didn't have the ability to pay back its debt and held off against all reason. That they didn't take a financial decision and do their job properly. They should have declared South Africa junk status 3 years before they did, but they finally did. And then you can no longer hide the fact that South Africa could not borrow money at less than 7% when a good government can borrow it at 2 or 3%, and that is very dangerous. So I can fix this. I can fix it real quick for you. And well, not real quick. It'll take a long time to fix it. But the answer to implement is a quick one. And it's stop this stupid pandering to people and letting them think that they're educated by having a 30% pass rate, and put qualified educators into schools. You know, listen, I don't know if you know about this, but in KZN, there's a period of time there, well, it's still a norm in many places, where young girls, especially prepubescent girls, in order to get marks, there's an expectation they have sex with their teachers. And,
oh my goodness.
no, this is rampant in KZN. It's not the only place, but it's rampant. And there was a stage there in which 75% of all male teachers in public schools in KZN were HIV positive, thereabouts.
Oh my goodness.
So not only do you damage a young girl or prepubescent or one who's just started menstruating, but the concern about pregnancy, physical damage, the psychological damage, and HIV and other STIs. And this is just, and people don't talk about this stuff. If you can't send your child to school to be educated, and even on top of that, they go to school and they're sexually preyed upon by teachers. That's and then you throw on top of that the nonsense with this BE, BS in the Eastern Cape, where they don't even deliver textbooks. These fraudulent, fictional BE companies get tenders, millions of rands, and no textbooks. So kids walk around, and then the pit latrines. Listen, why does South Africa need $7.1 billion worth of frigates, Gripen fighters, Type 2, 209 diesel submarines? They don't need that. That was just a way to steal. They didn't need those things. The Army is what needed upgrading. Now, I'm biased as an Army guy, but the Army is what's used for peacekeeping, not the Navy, not the Air Force. Right. And they sent the Army all over Africa, under Mandela, under Mbeki, under all of these guys. They're in the Congo, they're in Ivory Coast, they're in Eritrea, Ethiopia, they're in the Central African Republic, yada, yada. They're in Burundi. The Army got nothing. No, they haven't had a new truck since the end of apartheid. They haven't got no armored vehicles. Their weapons are falling apart. Their barracks are falling apart. And their soldiers are 50 years old. They need to get rid of them and recruit kids. Yeah, it's so the reason they spent the money on that is so they could steal and for prestige. Just like SA. SA is a prestige project. Ooh, it's our carrier. No, it's not. You don't need we don't have a national carrier in this country. It doesn't affect us. We have Air Force One. That's our national carrier, and that's for one guy. That's for the big poobah himself. But but it's just really, really sad to see this whole mess. But you got to fix education. And instead of fixing education, the ANC has ruined education. Listen, under apartheid, South Africa had some of the absolute best private schools on the planet. People would send their kids from all over Africa to South Africa for private school education, and a lot of really good public schools. But the reality is that most of that money was in neighborhoods where white South Africans were, right? That's the truth. We can't deny that. And so most white South Africans got a very good education. Most black South Africans got barely what they needed. Some got better educations, but few. Instead of balancing the scales, they took money away from the public schools that worked and made them bad and didn't fix the ones that didn't work. And they keep lowering the standards. You have functionally illiterate adults who have an expectation they're entitled to a job, this, that, and the other, and they have no concept of how the world is supposed to work. It's really sad.
Right. And talking about education, I want to use the words of Walter Williams, where he says that these matric certificates that are given out for people that get 30%, it's a fraudulent certificate. It's fraud.
It is fraud.
They were taken for a ride. Basically. And and also education is not really valued that much. And I really do believe that, one thing I've seen is that a lot of people are taking their kids out of the public schools and putting them into private schools because of the whole school choice thingy.
Right.
In South Africa, we do, I think each department of education in each province, they determine which school your child goes to based on your postal code. That is also a problem because there's also some sort of fraud that is also committed, address fraud as well, because people want to get their kids into the best schools.
Sure.
So I think education needs a lot of fixing. I think the problem is that the government just feels that people are just too dumb. That's the problem. And they see that as being sympathetic. But in fact, by doing that, they're actually denying people of the experiences that they need to actually improve themselves. So sometimes you need to get humbled in order for you to be better. But now people don't have that humbling experience. Then they're going to think that 30% is great. I remember I was watching a show on SABC, and this guy shared this the same video on Facebook.
Yeah.
And there was this guy from the Eastern Cape, and he was talking about how during the lockdown, he was helping children with their LO, with their life orientation subject. And I was like, oh my goodness, like how bad has this come? That people are actually proud of teaching people LO. They can't do mathematics. They can't write. Some of them can't read, but definitely LO. And I was like, come on, man.
We got that covered. Yeah. No, it's absolutely crazy. So Jeanette says, never mind. I don't, she was on some. I couldn't get far enough back in the stream, but she says, I'm colored, and hey, we're not all thieves. You're one. There's one every saying, yeah, Jeanette. If somebody said coloreds are thieves, then that faute sec. They need to get out of here.
Exactly.
You know that on this channel, I love coloreds. They're great people. Obviously, you got a few clowns. We all got clowns, and you can't lump 6 to 8 million coloreds in the same boat. I mean, the Greek aren't the same as the Cape Malays, but the point is that by and large, colored culture is such as it is, with its mix of Dutch Calvinism and Europeans and Khoi and San and South Asian from Indonesian men. It's fantastic, wonderful people, very entertaining, great, very lovely people. So we love coloreds on this channel. So Jeanette. So I don't know who said whatever they said, but if you said something picking on Jeanette, stop it. And then maybe I misread that. But then Stronger Together had a very nice comment. He said, I think Dumo has more common sense than Malema, Shivambu, Jacob Zuma, Dalimi Zuma, Ace, Magashula, Beckett, Chile, Ramaphosa, Mkhizi combined. Well, listen, I agree, but I don't think that's much of a compliment because it didn't take Dumo much to be brighter than any of those people. But nonetheless, it's a nice comment. Stronger Together also said the ANC asked America to help out with the Navy to sort out problems such as pirates. We don't have a Navy anymore. Chinese and other agents stealing our fish. I'm not sure the context, the time frame you're talking there, Stronger Together. Of course, I hope you realize that I was up close and personal with this. I worked at the Pentagon. I'm familiar with the policy. I worked at Africa Command. And I'm not sure what time frame you're referring to. We had nothing to do with the arms deal. We didn't encourage South Africa to buy those things. Our government thought that it was unnecessary. And the one time that the South Africans did approach us for the Navy that I'm fully aware of is they asked to participate in Combined Task Force 150th off the east coast of Africa, which was dealing with other things and later with piracy. But yeah, they've never, because of their affirmative action policies, or as I call it, racial discrimination policies, and because the way that they manage the Navy, they've never been able to man the 3 Type 209 diesel submarines or the 3 corvettes, cruisers, whatever you want to call them, that they bought from the Germans. They sit in port most of the time, and it's a really sad situation. So where are we at? Cool beans. Oh, Erica's back. Didn't know Erica left. Dumo. So it's really frustrating though, because everything is racialized now. Every time you turn around, it's the same thing here in America. Did you know that chess is racist? You know why? Because the white player goes first. Are you serious? People actually say that with a straight face. It's ridiculous. So, I mean, is checkers racist? Is it against blacks against Indians because it's red and black? Come on. And I guess it's racist because the Indians go first. Come on, that's just asinine. But people are doing that with everything. Everything. It's just ludicrous. It's beyond conception here. But you've seen it there in South Africa for a while. You've seen the hashtag science must fall. I'm still shaking my head about that. Let's see. You form a hypothesis. You come up with an idea. You come up with a strategy to test it. You prove it or disprove it, and you go, aha, that's science in a nutshell.
Right.
What does that have to do with racism? Not a damn thing.
Exactly.
Anyway.
And yesterday, a guest on our show even said that we have to embrace the scientific method. He said that Africa, for them to improve, they need to embrace the scientific method, because that is what improves things. It's research. We have to reward that. And he was very passionate about that. And I'm like, I agree. But now you've got people saying science must fall just because science can't explain, witchcraft. I'm like, well, it's not made to explain witchcraft. Okay. Witchcraft is something else. Okay. Come on. Like, it's ridiculous.
Well, listen, okay. We got called out earlier, and Andre Jacobs just said something. I'm going to call Andre out on this. Andre said, I once met an American from California, and he thought Africa was a country. 3 exclamation points. Who needs some help with education? 3 exclamation points. Oh, come on. Seriously, Andre. You don't honestly mean to take that single anecdotal example. I can take 10 South Africans and put them in a room, and I can take 10 people from China and put in a room, and I guarantee I can get over half of them to fail a simple geography test that I make on the spot from my knowledge coming out of my brain. I can take 10 South Africans, and some of them will speak 2 or 3 languages, but you'll find some of them who speak only a single language. People think Americans don't speak languages, but over 80 million Americans speak a second language to a degree of proficiency. That's larger than all of South Africa, the entire country. That's, these myths are just hysterical. I love how the Europeans always, in particular, look down their nose at Americans. Oh, you're such a country of bumpkins. You know nothing of history and geography. And then I ask questions about, European history, and they're like, huh? Completely ignorant.
Exactly.
Even educated people who don't know their own history. I know more about the history of ethnic German. Wow, that was loud in my ear. I know more about the history of ethnic Germans all over Europe than virtually any German researcher. And you find somebody, and we'll go toe to toe and compete on this. And I'm not a German historian. It's just something that interests me. It's something I followed for 40 years, and I've researched on the ground in the Baltics, in the Sudetenland, in Silesia, in South Tyrol, in South Africa, where there's 600,000 ethnic Germans. Yeah, that's right. Fourth generation South Africans whose first language is German.
Right.
That's right.
I know some of them. I had a next door neighbor who was German. Yeah.
Yeah, no, the Germans, a lot of people don't realize this, but Germans are the biggest DNA contribution to the so-called Afrikaner speaking, or the Afrikaans people in South Africa. They're actually more than the Dutch. That's not known because they do a good job assimilating. Penny just did a super chat. And she says, so funny how people take personal credit for their color as if they had a choice. I love your skin. Yeah, look, I'm pink and I had absolutely nothing to do with it. My mom and my dad were knocking boots and they happened to be pink as well. And that's how I got to be pink.
I like that description.
Andre says, did I touch a nerve? No, Andre, we're just having fun. I mean, look, Dumo, you're having a good time, aren't you? I'm having a good time.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I'm having a good time.
We're just having fun. You didn't touch a nerve, Andre. I just, things like that, stereotypes, I like to call them out. Just like the whole thing earlier when I didn't catch the whole stream, but I got the impression somebody said something about colors being thieves, and I didn't let that slide. So anyway.
Right.
Yeah. So come on, let's cover a couple more topics in a little bit of time. We've gone for an hour and 45 minutes. It seems like we've been talking 15. So let's cover a few more. Oh, Jimsy says knocking boots. That's a new one, dude. That's not new. Knocking boots shows my age. But I will say that the only person I ever hear say it is me. I say knocking boots all the time. So anyway. Well, what do you want? Anything you want to cover? We talked a little bit about the U.S., but we really can get into a lot of the nonsense happening here. But you did ask some good questions about it. But we got let's cover something here in the last few minutes because we got an audience that's tuned in.
Oh, okay. Right. Let's see. So we spoke about education. We spoke about the economy. What is? I'm really trying to see. Mm-hmm. I mean, those are the main topics because I mean that's what interests me, right? Let me just explain why it interests me. So I think that going forward in South Africa, we may need to be a bit more articulate and a bit more intentional in what we do. When I look at like how my father grew up, how my mom grew up, and everything like that, I really do think that there is great potential among Black people in South Africa. I mean, I heard stories of Black South Africans building schools and teaching people. I mean, my dad, he also went to these type of schools and he learned Latin and stuff like that. And these are people that speak Xhosa as a first language, and they can speak English fluently. And then, they still manage to do what they still manage to, despite, the apartheid system, they still manage to succeed. So I'm just saying, like, look, can we at least be honest with each other as South Africans? ANC, EFF, come on. We all know that socialism is BS. It doesn't work. You know it yourself. Like, come on. The only reason why you're saying it works is because you want votes. And you're too scared that you cannot compete with someone else because, someone else in the private market because they might have the upper hand over you. And the only way you can really gain riches is through politics. So I'm like, look, this is what you want to do. But look at the damage that you're causing to millions of South Africans. You make the matric pass rate 30%. You create a substandard version of maths called maths literacy, right? Which for me it's maths light. I mean, why do that? You guys loot things crazy, and then when people protest and everything like that, you make it a racial issue. I'm like, come on, man. Like, this can't continue forever. This could get worse. Yeah. Guys, look, I know you're earning a lot of money. Like, what do you want? Again, if I was a dictator, I'd just say, okay, guys, how much do you want? I'll give you $10 million each, just for you guys to get out of here. Just go to Dubai. If money is what you want, I'll give it to you. Because honestly, the pursuit of politicians' interests is not in line with what South Africans need. Because there's so many South Africans out there who want opportunities. I mean, they just want the simple things, but the government does not provide them. And a lot of them, because now they've been denied education, they don't know things. They're very naive and they're very susceptible to exploitation and so forth. That's why a clicks advert can just trigger them, and they forget that the economy shrank by 51%. You know, and I'm just like, I'm just thinking that like there has to be something from within. Like South Africans, you know, you need to, you know, pull your own resources together. You look at that of solidarity. Look what they did at the university. And they did this from 10 Rand donations. 10 Rand donations. You're telling us that, and I'm like, bro, we outnumber these guys. You're telling me we can't do that? Mm-hmm. Come on. You know, I'm just saying, guys, you know, I know the ANC, they fought and everything. And again, it's controversial. Yes, they fought with the IFP and so forth. But I mean, symbolically, you could say that they were the party that led us out of apartheid. But again, that is also debatable. And but let's say you do have that connection to the ANC. Okay, they did that. Congratulations. Thank you. But now it's time to move on. It's time to move on to better things now. And I think the best way they can do it is that South Africans have to take their own destiny into their own hands, build their own communities. And I think they'll do well that way. And they can learn a lot. And I just don't know why we're not doing this, because it's like we're sitting there and we're saying, government here, please do something. No, it's like, no, let's do something. And I think that's what we need, that fight from within. And that's why the economics and the social issues, I'm so passionate about those.
No, I got you.
Right.
Listen, I was a bit of a contrarian when it was in Zimbabwe, and people were like, how do we solve the Zimbabwe crisis? Well, I saw it for what it was. It wasn't about racism. It wasn't about land. Land was the tool. The real issue here, because if land was the issue, then 42% of all commercial farmland would have been in the hands of poor black Zimbabweans, because 42% of all commercial farmland so designated by the government itself was sold at least once from 1980 under majority rule until 2000. So they could have had 42% of it. Then we didn't have the money. You had the money. You took 63 million pounds from the Brits. You bought farms. You gave it to Piri, the head of the Air Force in the 5th Brigade, and you gave it to Solomon Juru, and you gave it to Mugabe's cronies. So you didn't give it to poor Zimbabweans. But what I said, if you want to stop this happening in 2000, this farm invasion, this is all you have to do. Take a plane, like they eventually did with Obama to Iran, fill it full of cash, and make quarterly deliveries to Harare so that ZANU-PF has money that it can steal from you rather than from the people of Zimbabwe. And then they'll stop this issue with the farms, and all this nonsense will go away. The reason they attack the farms is because, I'm getting back to the point, you're like, tell me how much money you need so we can just get some good governance. It's the same thing in Zimbabwe. Just tell me how much money you need so that you stop preying on your own people, because unless they're gone, they're going to keep preying on their own people. And sadly, that's where the ANC finds itself these days. I don't think it's a legitimate party anymore. And my hope is that in 2021, the municipal elections occur like they're supposed to, and that a majority government takes over in all the major metros, including Durban, which I think would probably have to be a coalition. But I'm looking at the numbers from 2016 and how angry people are right now. It should be easy for the DA to win Nelson Mandela Bay back. They should have had it last time, but they lost votes. And even though they had the largest vote block, it was only 45%. So Nelson Mandela Bay, Cape Town, Joburg, and Shwana should all fall to the DA without any real challenge. And people say I'm crazy. The DA got 17% of the so-called black vote in Gauteng in 2019, even though they screwed the pooch with their ridiculous platform and their ANC-light approach. So hopefully, if a party can take over and unseat the ANC from those metros, even though they don't have control over the budget because a lot comes from the national government, they'll give them time till 2024 to show that governance outside the ANC is possible and successful. And they can form coalitions with minor parties like COPE, the African Christian Democratic Party, Freedom Front Plus, as long as you have a majority. But if you don't have a majority, then you're beholden to your coalition and you don't accomplish things. Just ask Athol Trollop and Nelson Mandela Bay how hard it is to govern in a coalition. But if you have a majority, and then that's a path. But short of that, South Africa is not on a good trajectory. It's not good.
Yeah. I'm a quick question. I know we're about to end soon. Now, what if let's say for South Africa, what if we have a situation where we have a coalition in the national government? Because I think that'll be ideal. Because therefore, let's say because I think probably that was the vision of the of those who wrote the Constitution is that we have these coalitions.
Yeah.
And that way it's like kind of a deadlock. So nothing can really happen. So if nothing can really happen, then people have more freedom in a sense. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, the problem once again with coalitions is this: that if you don't have a ruling coalition, so if you don't have 201 members in the parliament, and you want to vote for something, you have to coerce or convince or coax or make a deal so that another party will get something from it that they want specifically. And that leads to what I think is government corruption. We see here in the United States, you see these bills in which they attach bridges to nowhere. They build a bridge on an island nobody uses and spend $150 million on it just to get votes in a constituency. And that's the hazard with that. If you rule and you're an honest party, you have a majority, then I think it's okay to have a majority and form a coalition and show that, but now some parties have fragile egos. The DA might have a fragile ego and go, well, we've won 210 seats in the parliament in 2023. We're ruling as a majority party. Screw the Freedom Front Plus, which got 20 seats this time, and COPE, which got 5, and Inkatha Freedom Party, which got 10. We don't need them. I think that's an unhealthy approach. I think that I don't think the DA is going to pull it off, but let's say the DA won a majority in 2023 in Parliament. I think the smartest move they could do is approach other parties who have similar views, but not always the same, and say, come join our coalition. And then if, say, Inkatha Freedom Party says, well, we don't agree with your position on this, you have to change it. Like, well, we can consider changing it, but we don't need you in this coalition, so we're not going to change it if it's not something that works for all South Africans. But coalition politics can be disastrous. I made this point of Italy the other day, and somebody contradicted me on Roman's channel, I think it was, and said Italy's a bad example. It's not a bad example. Italy has had like 75 different governments since the Second World War. They had governments collapsing every 3 months or less in that country for a period of time because one party get 20%, one party get 18%, and you have to form a coalition. You've got to address the wants and desires of 5 or 6 different parties, or you can't reach a decision in Parliament and you can't govern. And so you have elections all the time, and it just tires people out. So I'm not a fan of coalition politics unless you can get a majority on your own and then form a coalition. Because South Africa doesn't come back from this abyss unless things that exist now, like broad-based black economic empowerment, are struck down as unconstitutional.
Right. Okay.
Thanks. Okay. Well, that's a view. Not everybody agrees with it, but that's a view. Anyway, so listen, I'm going to cut it here because, man, you've been fantastic. This went so fast. If you're interested in me coming on your channel, just let me know. But I'd like to invite you back to the channel, and we'll have a more set agenda next time. But folks, as I promised, for those who are still here, I got a little treat for you. Steve Hoffmeyer has produced a new song. And for those of you who have difficulty understanding Afrikaans pronunciation sometimes, like me, all the lyrics are in Afrikaans at the bottom, and it's also at a slow cadence so you can follow along. But this is Steve Hoffmeyer's new song that he's put out. It just released today. He sent it to me personally and gave me permission to air it, so I don't want to let him down. For those who don't know, Jeremy Nell, Germ Warfare, will be on my channel this evening at 9 o'clock. So after you're finished watching Ronaldo Ros, or maybe you're watching Dodgy Joe Emilio right now, but you wouldn't be here if you're watching Joe. But whichever you're watching, feel free to come back to the channel tonight. Jeremy Nell, the gentleman who's been deplatformed from live streams on YouTube, will be my guest tonight at 9 p.m. in South Africa and Botswana, 8 p.m. in Windhoek, London, and Abuja, and also that would be 3 p.m. here in the East Coast of the United States. So he'll be back with me. But before he goes, I want to thank my guest, Dumo, so much. I really enjoyed this conversation. I had fun. We both went on a few rants, and like I said, it was more like a conversation than an interview, which is really intense. So any final thoughts before we part? Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it. And yes, I would like to be on here sometime in the future. And yeah, guys, to all the listeners and everyone, thanks for being such great listeners, and love the comments and stuff like that. And yes, I'd love to be on here next time. Before you go, I can't let this one go. Jim G asked a question. He seems to be a huge fan of yours, so I don't know if he's setting you up for failure or success. But he says, what's your opinion on Herman Mashaba? Do you want to answer that? Or?
I've answered this like 10 million times on our channel. Come on. Okay. What I said was that Herman Mashaba, he seems to have a good base going. And I think that he will get a good response in any election. I don't agree with all his policies, but I can see that he's gaining a lot of traction, and he will be a force to reckon with. That's my opinion on him.
Okay. We have different views on Herman Mashaba. I actually had a good view of him, but it changed when he left the DA. Not because I'm a DA supporter. I have a lot of issues with the DA, but to me, he seems to be a political opportunist, but I'd love to have him on my channel to talk about it. But I will say this, maybe he is gaining traction, Dumo, but I did a video the day that his party was launched, and it's one of my lowest performing videos. So I don't know who's going to his side, but maybe they should come find out about Chris White Africa, because I didn't say bad things about Herman. I said good things. So we'll see. But anyway, all right. Well, with that, we're going to end it there. Dumo Denga, thank you so much for being my guest on the channel. He's not from Central Africa. He's a Xhosa from the Western Cape, and I always pronounce Xhosa wrong.
Gauteng.
Oh, you're from Gauteng.
Xhosa from Gauteng, yes.
Ah.
Xhosa waseGoli.
Ah, okay. Hey, Kimotswana. Anyway, all right. Well, thanks a lot from Gauteng. My apologies for that. By the way, I don't know if you know, I've always aspired to be the benign dictator of a small African country. My original thoughts were Eswatini, the e-commerce capital of Africa, because I'm really into e-commerce. And I like the reed dance. That'd be kind of cool every year. But the other thing is, I thought about Lesotho, but it's kind of cold and wet and kind of sleepy there. So I've been seriously considering, the breakaway province of Gauteng as my potentate to be a benign dictator of Gauteng. So in that case, you'd be one of my subjects if I become the king there. Just letting you know in advance.
No problem. We'll do.
All right. I'm going to again let you leave the screen there. I'm going to close my screen, and we're going to play Steve Hoffmeyer's new video, folks. All right. Thanks a lot, Dumo. So he's heading out now. Let me close off both of these Zoom. Come on, here we go. Folks, thanks for hanging around. This is from Steve Hoffmeyer. I hope you enjoy this. It's absolutely brilliant. I just got to get back to getting it here. And this is his latest video. Where's it at? It's not. There it is. Here we go. This is a new song released today. Courtesy of Steve Hoffmeyer, folks. Thanks a lot for tuning in. And I'll be back at 9 p.m. with Jeremy Nell.